Hi everyone, happy Wednesday. I hope you all are having a great day. We got started here right at 7 o'clock and I can't wait to see some people join. Feel free to ask questions throughout the entirety of this video. That's what I'm here for. I'm going to start by going over some of the supplies that I use while appliquing. After I go over the supplies, then I'll start with a 4x4 applique and then a repositional hoop applique. I already have them set up in my sewing machine, but I will go ahead and walk you through again how I set them up in PE Design 10. But again, any of these programs or software programs that you use will allow you to do the applique. So first off, we have our hoops. I've got the 4x4. I have my repositional hoop. I also have somewhere, these are my applique scissors. I use the Ginger double bend 6-inch scissors. They're on sale right now on Amazon for like 20 bucks, but these are my favorite things to use for applique. You're also going to need whatever you're going to stitch on. So your stabilizer, your cloth, or your blank, whatever it is you want. Obviously your thread, and then whatever fabric you choose. I'm going to do the Raggedy Oklahoma one that I showed you guys yesterday. So we're going to start this. This is the 4x4 design that we're going to do. I'm doing this one because I'm showing you one that we're going to leave rough, and then I'm going to show you one that we will let the machine finish for us. So that's why we've got two different ones here. I'm going to start off by hooping the 4x4, so bear with me here. I hope, my light's going to be a little bad right here, so I'm sorry. That's my underneath of a shelf, but I have pre-cut of just a basic white piece of fabric and my tearaway stabilizer. Remember, your stabilizer matters, so just check your cloth and figure out whatever it is that you need, but this is pretty much all you use. There's going to be a lot of people that tell you to use Heat and Bond Light on the back of whatever fabric you're using to applique. I definitely suggest that if you're using a satin stitch, but since we're not doing a satin stitch, I'm doing a raggedy stitch for this one. I don't need the Heat and Bond Light because I want it to fray and I want it to look a little funky. Okay, so I've got my hoop set, nothing special, just my plain fabric over here. And I'm going to go ahead and pull out my USB and get this all set up. Okay, so bear with me here. Come on. My machine has been running really slow. I don't know if anyone else's has. Okay, so here is my applique, and I want to show you guys. I'm not going to change the size or anything. It's all fine. Okay, so this red stitch right here, this is going to be your stitch that tells you where to put your fabric. And then the blue stitch is going to be my actual applique. I wanted to point that out because you're going to see that a lot. You're going to see a stitch of where to, it's going to stitch down and it's going to give you a guide on how big and where to actually put your fabric. And I'm just putting my hoop in right now while I talk. And then there's also going to be the stitch that just tacks the actual fabric down. And then there's going to be the stitch that normally seals it. Because this one is that raggedy stitch, there's not going to be anything that goes around it or seals it, but you'll get the gist. It's going to be the same thing. So I'm just using some basic pink thread. You can change your thread colors. You can do whatever you want. Whenever I do an applique, I don't. For that tack down stitch and that guide stitch, I typically just use the same thread. I am all about whatever I can do to change thread less. So I make it pretty easy on myself, but that's completely up to you. Sorry guys, I'm having to cross over. Okay, so let me go ahead and show you guys this. We're gonna go ahead and just hit start. Oh, gotta lower the presser foot. Okay, so I'm hitting start here. This is literally just going to kind of sketch out the design essentially for me to tell me where to put the fabric down. After this is done, we will go back in and trim it. The purpose of this, whenever you guys see your traditional appliques, you'll see this stitch, then you'll put your fabric down, then you'll see the tack down stitch. That's where we'll take it off and trim. And then you'll put it back in for it to hoop. But since we're just doing this one, it actually only has 2 stitches, so it's very easy to do. These raggedy stitches, you want them to fray. Again, you can Heat and Bond Light them, but it's not going to fray the way you want it to. These scissors are my favorite. I actually pretty much even replaced my thread trimmers with these scissors. everything so easy. They get right in that hoop. So if you guys have any questions, don't let me know, or don't hesitate to let me know. Don't let me know, please do. But I'm gonna go ahead and let this stitch out. Doing that, I'm gonna walk you back through how I set up my 5x7 repositional hoop. So I know I kind of jump back and forth, but it's just to kind of give us that, make these a little bit shorter and give us that time while this is stitching instead of me just staring at a screen for you guys. So I went ahead and had my design pulled up. I'm doing this really cute 3 in a row stitch. It's gonna be snow cones. Oh, I know, sorry guys, I can't rotate my phone. So my repositional hoop is gonna be snow cones. So there's actually gonna be 3 pieces to this. Because of the way this is, it would not let me send it to my USB in one pattern here. So I did have to go ahead and split the stitches like I walked you guys through last time. So each snow cone has its own stitch split. For the sake of time and just for this design, I actually want my cups to be white. So I'm not even gonna put applique on here. I'm only gonna applique this little part, and I'll show you what that means. Okay, so this part is done. So let's go ahead, lift up the pressure foot and pull this out. You don't have to pull this out in this portion. If you can fit your fabric on here, feel like you have to always take your hoop out. The only time you really ever have to take it out is for trimming. So I'm just going to go ahead and trim these jump stitches, that way I don't have to mess with it. I normally stop my machine and actually trim my jump stitches in the process because I really hate going back and trimming jump stitches, but that's my personal preference. Okay, so I have this cute little floral fabric that was in one of those packets that you get at Walmart. Again, traditionally you can use Heat and Bond Light on here and iron out your fabric. Just because this is for play, I have not, but typically I will always iron out even if I'm not going to Heat and Bond Light this. So I'm basically just doing a very rough around the edge square. It does not have to be pretty. It does not have to be perfect. As long as it covers your design, this is all that you need. I'm gonna put this back in here and snap this down. Okay. So here we go. And it's gonna stitch back over this. And it's actually gonna create an outline to where it's not gonna come back up. The Heat and Bond Light will also help it adhere to your fabric or whatever it is that you're using. You can pen this down. Some people use spray adhesive. I personally don't like spray adhesive. It can distort the colors. It can kind of change some things on your fabric. It also can gum up your needle depending on how much you use. So if you use it, just be very light with it. And again, all of this is just tips and tricks. So if you have your own way that works for you, do it. I'm not here to tell you how to do it. I'm just here to show you how I traditionally do it. So as you can see, this is going to give that nice sealed stitch on here. And we will let this stitch out. While stitching, does anyone have any questions I can answer while this is stitching out? See, we've got a few people following along with us live. I know a lot more people will come back here in a little bit. I'm always open to answer any questions. I would love to also see whatever you guys do. So if you try applique after doing this, post some pictures. We can give you advice, we can help. We can also we're just here to encourage each other. So I would love to see that. And I'd love to see whatever designs you guys should try. I'm always up for finding new applique designs. I think they're so much fun. Welcome to the few people who just joined us. Happy Wednesday. I am currently in the process of doing the 4x4 applique hoop, and it is doing the final stitch. This one is Raggedy Learn. You're so welcome. This one is the Raggedy Edge, so this one is not going to go back and have that pretty satin finish on it. I can go back and do a third one with the satin finish if you guys are really interested in it. The second one I'm going to be doing is going to be using that repositional hoop. It's going to have 3 different designs to it, but it's actually going to finish with a blanket stitch. If you're aware of what a blanket stitch is, it's just this finish right here. There's the zigzag stitch, which is obviously a zigzag, satin, which is solid, and it's going to be very similar to this, and then this is the blanket stitch. So we do this as well, but I'm just currently waiting for this to stitch out. This is the lovely part about live videos, is you just kind of sit here and wait. So guys, throw the questions at me while this is doing this, because I'm not as distracted. This is the perfect time for it. But this is going to be the final product, just in different fabric. And again, I will show you how to do it. Again, these are my favorite scissors. Ginger double bend, because you can see they bend a little bit up at the tip, and then they also bend to fit in the hoop. That way you can get a really close cut. When I first started doing applique, I did not realize that you can actually take the hoop out. I was trying to trim it all while it was still hooped, and it was a mess. I was not getting clean cuts. I was not getting clean stitches or clean edges. So every time your machine stops, feel free to unhoop. Just make sure you do not bump the thing that actually holds your hoop, otherwise that can change your setting. As long as you keep it exactly where it is, you'll be good, and you can go right back to it. You can even pause your machine and take it out if you want to add in an applique. I have some like faux smock things that I've been doing that don't actually even have an applique, but they have that trim down stitch. So I will put down a piece of fabric after that trim down stitch and then let it go through and finish it. There's multiple ways you can do this. You can kind of create your own applique. What I love about applique is it changes the design every time you change your fabric, which makes it really fun. Okay, so this design is done, and I'm going to show you guys what it looks like here. This is it on the hoop. It's just that square piece of fabric. So bear with me, guys. I'm going to try and show you how I'm doing. It's just my machine. That doesn't help you at all. Okay, so this is going to be a little bit of a challenge, but I'm going to trim this as close to this design as I absolutely can. This is why I love these scissors. Let me show you here in just a second how close. So this is how close you can actually get with these scissors. I know the stitches are very hard to see, but basically what we're doing here is we are just finishing this up. Like I said, this is that raggedy stitch, so it's not going to be, we didn't do the tack down stitch, we didn't go back in, trim in between the tack down stitch and the satin stitch. If that's what you end up doing, you pick a satin design or even this blanket stitch that we're going to do next, and I'll show you that process. Make sure you trim before you do your satin stitch. Otherwise, you're not going to get that close cut that you're really looking for. I got my scissors off Amazon, and I think they're actually currently on sale. I will post the link when I'm done with this, but they're about $20 and they're worth every penny. I think I was at Joann's the other day, pretty sure you can get them at Joann's. I just happened to buy them off Amazon. If I don't have to leave my house, I'm all for shopping. So bear with me here, guys. I'm trying to cut this as fast as possible. For the first applique pattern, I suggest something that is one color. Don't jump in and try and do one where you have to trim and do 15 different ones. Unfortunately, this design I'm showing you next is going to be a little bit more complicated, but just find something that's very, very simple. In the PE Design 10, they have an Applique Wizard, so if you're working in that software, I'm sure some other ones do, but you can actually create anything you want with your own lettering. So my first applique that I did is I just did a letter of a last name. I think I just did a C, something that was really easy to cut and trim, but that way I could kind of practice with it. I will say my first time doing it, I just jumped in and did it on one of my blanks. Thankfully, it ended up working out, but I don't necessarily recommend that. I always recommend, you're very welcome, I recommend testing out every design that you can on white fabric or just scrap fabric. It doesn't really matter what color it is. I like white just because I can see whatever color the thread would actually look like, as well as what the fabric would look like, and because I always just buy it on sale whenever it's at Hobby Lobby. I always keep a couple yards on hand, and then I just cut it down. And if it turns out good, if I like the way that my stitch looks, or if I like the way that my applique looks, I have a little booklet going where I just save all of my patterns. And then that way I can, for customers, I can show them the way different designs look. So this one I'm going to have 2 or 3 of these fabrics because I've done it a few times now, but that way they can see what it looks like with different fabrics. Okay, so this one's not completely done. It still has a few of these pieces in here, but basically you just dig those scissors, if I can do this, right in and just literally cut it. I was very, very afraid the first couple times I did this that I was going to cut through my actual fabric. and then create holes. It's surprisingly easy to not do that and to just slide your scissors in that hole that you need and not go all the way through, which is really nice, and definitely something that's more controlled with smaller build scissors. Whenever you have those big duckbill scissors, which I've been wanting to try, I don't own a pair, but you can't really just slide in that hole nearly as easy, or do those smaller ones. So this one is pretty much done. This is the ragged edge. Again, to eliminate that edge, you can always line it, or line this fabric with Heat and Bond Light. Most people do that and suggest it, but since this is that raggedy pattern, I like to let it fray. And it's not going to fray past these stitches, which is really great. I have washed them, I've tested it, it's all good. Okay, so that's the 4x4. Does anyone have any questions on this raggedy 4x4 before I move on and start preparing for that repositional hoop one that we talked about? I'll let you guys, any questions before I move on? Okay, so I already walked through at the very beginning of this video. Feel free to go back, but it's the same process as the regular repositional hoop, or that video that I did the other day. So give me just a few seconds. I'm going to once again hoop, and I'm gonna just bring this over here. I am just using, whoops, if my oh, there we go. Okay, sorry. Okay, I'm just using regular tearaway. I buy the really big bolts of the tearaway on Amazon. I haven't tried any of the other ones. It's cheap, and it's like 20 bucks for 50 yards. So, or it might only be 50 feet, I don't know, but that's my favorite. Okay, so I've got my repositional hoop set up. Nothing special, white fabric. It does look like it needs to be tightened just a little bit, so I'm gonna pull it. I don't always recommend pulling your fabric. It can stretch it, it can cause puckering whenever you take it out, but in this instance, since it's just for a tester, pull away. Does anyone have any applique designs that they've been dying to try? Is that something that you guys have been wanting to do? Okay, yes, my button does not operate. Okay, so we are pulling up here well, if I can see where I'm hitting, sorry guys. Okay, so this is, we've got the bottom, the top, and the middle. For some reason, that is the way this computer split it up, so I'm gonna start with the top one. And remember again, top on the machine means top hoop right here. I'm gonna plug this in. Okay, don't be scared, guys. You just have to jump in. Okay, so we are going to end this edit. This is what it's going to do, the tack down stitch. Like I said, I've got some cute floral fabric here that I'm going to do for the very top of the snow cone, but I'm actually going to leave the cup white. So I'm going to go ahead and just do the tack down stitch as normal and not change anything about it. I don't know about you, but my machines really kind of thread underneath it if I don't hold down this starting stitch. So I'm going to hold it for just a few seconds. Cool. I don't know what that was for, but that's where that started. So it wants to start with the straw next because it's going to do the stitch over the straw. I'm going to go ahead and change my thread. I am just only using 2 thread colors. Like I said originally, you guys can do whatever you want. So this one has, and typically most appliques will have each stitch a different color, but that's a lot of thread changing, especially if you know that you're really only going to want 1 or 2 colors of thread. So I just don't really change it that often. Okay, so I'm going to let it stitch out this little straw. This is also my first time testing this precious little summer stitch, so we will see how this goes. Like I said, don't be afraid, but also I recommend starting with just a basic letter. There's some really fun applique fonts out there on Etsy. There's some great applique designs. I typically start with whatever's on sale or whatever's free, just to make sure that it's something that I enjoy. Okay, so let me take you guys back to this. This is going to be this tack down stitch. This is something that is just going to tell you the placement of the fabric. I have only been doing applique, let's see, I think I started it in January. It hasn't been very long. I had a couple baby gifts that I just couldn't find anything I liked as far as embroidery went, so I just decided to try it and I just jumped in. There's not too much of a learning curve. Once you kind of figure out what it is you need to do, you can do it, I promise. It's not as scary as what it sounds. It's something that always scared me, but I just decided to do it, and I'm really glad I did. I'm kind of in love with it. It might be my favorite part of embroidery right now. Okay, so here is going to be this tack down stitch. Or I guess really this is more of like the stencil stitch. This one's always very basic outline of what it is that you need. This is just going to kind of help us gauge the size. Yes, always additional software. Because that additional software allows you to resize, allows you to edit, it allows you to merge. I mean, I guess technically you don't have to use additional software, but you would have to take everything at face value and just make sure that it works in your machine, that there's nothing you ever want to change, which can be a little frustrating. So I figured this would be fun to try out some snow cones with, and I want to show you guys this size. So this is, I don't know, 2 to 3 knuckles worth. And I guys, remember again, I am very just like, go for it. Do we look like that? How do we feel about that? Let's see, I'm just gonna lay that down. Okay, cool. So that little piece, extra piece, actually covers up the spot that we need. Now, there's one way to do this. I was gonna do this piece in the middle and then these 2 other pieces on the outside. So that's still what I'm gonna do. But basically, this just tells me the size of the square or rectangle that I need to cut. So where are my fabric scissors? And I'm just going to cut this very loosely. Since I know how big it is that I need this, I'm going to go ahead and just cut all the pieces that I need, since these are the only pieces that I'm doing. Or pieces that I am doing, not... It's very poor English, sorry guys. Okay, so I've got my 3 pieces that I'm going to need for my 3 different snow cones. Last time I lifted up, so you guys see what it looks like to lift up. This time I'm not. I'm just literally laying it down, making sure that stitch is covered. I hit something on my machine, and then you just hit go. So now it's going to do this stitch to hold down the fabric for us. And then after this piece is where we'll pull it back up and trim it before we do that final step. Okay. So now I'm and unhoop this. Sorry guys, I know I'm just kind of jumping back and forth, but unhoop this and find my applique scissors, and I'm going to trim this really quick. If you cut your piece way too big, I always save my extra pieces. You never know when you're going to need just a little piece, exactly like what we need for this. But sometimes the pieces are too small, you just throw them away. I'm also kind of a fabric hoarder, so I keep majority of them. This is obviously going to be not enough. So what you want to do is trim this as close as you possibly can. So this one, I've got pretty close to the stitches. There's probably a little bit of room for improvement on there, and I will find that out once this stitch is out. Okay, so now this is going to do that blanket stitch on the outside. And I figure out, or I remember where I got this precious snow cone stitch. Let me see if I can figure this out. These designs always stitch very quickly, which is really nice. 3 and 11. Remember, it's called a snowball, not a snow cone, which threw me off originally when I was searching for it. So let's see if I can find this again. I think it's from Athalicious Design, so that's a very quick design. Okay, like I thought, you guys, I did not trim this well enough. So now I'm gonna have a little bit, this part is good, this part's raggedy. So you can always go back and you can trim it, but that needed to be trimmed closer than what I did, unfortunately. Okay, now this is where it's going to outline the cup for me if I had wanted to do additional pieces of the cup. Since I'm not, for this purpose of this, I just think white cups are very snow cone-ish. I'm just going to leave it the way it is. We're just going to let it finish out all of the stitches, and I'm just going to keep hitting go or start until it's done. Typically, it's line the cup. This is where you would put another piece of fabric down. Then you would hit start. Now it's going to do that tack down stitch for that fabric for you. And then it will go back. This is the tack down stitch, even though there's not any fabric there. You can even skip this. Like I posted the other day on the video, you can go right here and you can skip thread colors and you can actually skip stitches. But since this is kind of a sketch design, I always like to make it as bold as possible. So I'm going to go ahead and leave that. And now it's going to go ahead and do that zigzag stitch for me. And then for some reason, the way this transferred, it's going to have my straw from the second design here. It probably just carried over into this area. So I will go ahead and change the thread color and get that second straw done here in just a second. So I'll let you guys just see this. Do you guys have any more questions while this is just stitching out? Okay, well, feel free to keep the questions coming, and like I said earlier in the video, I would love to see whatever you guys try once you guys try your applique. So please continue to post in the thread, or we can start a new one with your applique designs, but that way we can kind of see how everyone is doing and if anyone needs any more help. So this is almost done, and then we'll go ahead and do the straw. For some reason, this design just reminds me completely of summer, so I've been really excited to try this, and I've had it for probably 2 or 3 months now, and I've just been waiting to try it, so I thought this was the perfect time. Okay, rethread. If you guys have threading issues, the cones don't work for you, I also keep a mug by my, yes, I will do that here in just a second, but I keep a mug so that way some cones, it just for some reason does not thread right, and I think this maybe is one of them. That creates a little bit more tension instead of me having to buy a thread stand. So there's different ways you guys can do this. But yes, it is Alphalicious, so A-L-P-H-A and then Licious Designs. They are on Etsy. I'm pretty sure they're on Etsy, but they for sure have their own website. And this is called 3 in a Row Snowball. They're all done in the hoop. There's nothing that you'll do that's not in the hoop as far as applique. So you can do anywhere. Etsy's my favorite just because I like to be able to go back and all in one seller. I've got accounts with pretty much any designer you can think of, and sometimes I'll buy them from their website. They keep different designs from the website, or from their websites occasionally than what's on Etsy. So it's always good to go back and check. I know Marma B definitely keeps some different designs, and Jack and Mac as well. But it's really just kind of up to you. I like them all in one spot and to be able to go back. And then sometimes I like to buy multiples from different locations, and Etsy allows me to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and trim this. You're welcome. Alphalicious is really cute. They've got quite a bit of applique designs. Okay, so this is actually done embroidering. Yay, we've got 1 out of 3 done. Remember, this is the repositional hoop, so there's going to be 3 separate processes to this. If this wants to load. I don't know why this has been going so slow. I think I've been using it too much. Okay, so this is the very bottom one. This one's the middle one, so I'm going to go ahead and set this. And then pause. I can change the hoop, so just... Yes, placement stitch tells you where to put your fabric. Then you'll put your fabric down, you'll do a tack down stitch, and then you'll trim it. Give me just a second because this one is actually getting ready to do just that process. Okay, so I also have a Mac, but I went ahead and partitioned my Mac. I'm gonna go ahead and just let this do that stitch. So that way I can have windows just for my embroidery. I had to do it because I had a singer that was very, very picky, and actually it only took software for Windows. So I have mine partitioned Brilliance does a MAC, but I honestly don't know. Since I already had this partitioned and all my designs saved on here, I just left it and didn't really feel like messing with it. Okay, so it did the placement stitch. Now we're just going to cover up that placement stitch, make sure we're good, that there's nothing showing. I am going to go ahead and change the thread color since I'm trying to do everything in pink. Come back to this, so sorry, bear with me, guys. I know you guys are probably tired of seeing my face and just want to watch this stitch out. It's the lovely part. Well. And you're welcome. It's really easy to partition your MAC if you haven't done so already. For some reason, just most crafting stuff tends to work better on a Windows style, so that's the way I've done this. Okay, so this is good to go. This is going to do this tack down stitch before we trim. We did learn last time that I did not trim close enough, so I'm going to make sure and trim closer this time. So guys, I'm going to pull this off the hoop. Thank you. I don't feel like I'm a fast threader. I actually messed up on that one, so that's quite the accomplishment. My sewing teacher back in high school would love to hear that. Okay, so now here's these scissors again. Anyone is asking, I will happily post that link. I'm going to cut to this as close as I possibly can. So we'll see if I did better this time. And remember guys, I am making this stitch as simple as possible. I am only doing the snowballs. You could make this a lot more complicated, and you could go ahead and also do the cup portion. It's really whatever you're feeling. I just, here in Oklahoma, we always get our snow cones in white cups, so to me that's kind of what makes the most sense. Okay, and now I'm going to go ahead and start the blank stitch, or the top stitch over here. Yay, it looks like I cut this one a little bit better. So even people that do videos are still not perfect, and this is why I always test out things, because I probably would have left the stitches long like I did. Oh, and now my thread got caught, so now you guys can see that. So that's just lovely. But if it was up to me and I was just trying this for the first time, I would have left it long. I would have left it probably a lot more complicated than what this is, and this one actually needs to be trimmed as close as possible. Okay, so I trimmed off my jump stitch. Oh, my phone keeps hitting my machine, so sorry if you guys keep hearing the buttons. I'm going to put that presser foot back down. I always lift it up just that way I don't accidentally hit the start button and chop off my leg. So you absolutely can go back with a wider stitch if your design allows for it. This one is a blanket stitch. I'll pull it back up on my computer, that way you guys can see it. And so it doesn't really have that thick stitch to it. I could probably go back over it again. Satin stitches, you have more room to not trim as close or mess up, because it's going to get a thicker stitch and it's going to be solid. With this blanket stitch, it's not. It's already going to be raggedy anyway, because I did not put that Heat and Bond light on the back of this. So it's already going to have kind of that fray in between the stitches, which is fine. That's what I wanted. But I don't know that you could necessarily go back. You could always go back over it again just to make sure that you're really good, but I don't know that you could necessarily put a wider stitch on it unless you redigitize the design yourself. As far as the iPad, no, unless they've changed the iPad, because you have to transfer things from a USB port. It has to go onto the USB port. So unless the iPad has a hole for that USB, there's no way you can transfer. The Heat and Bond stabilizes this fabric, makes it stiffer. It also keeps it from fraying. And then it's just kind of essentially like a stabilizer between this fabric and the other fabric that you're doing. It's completely up to you whether or not you use it. I've never used it. But I did, that's not true. I've not used it 99.9% of the time. There was one time I was doing more of like a satin fabric that I just needed that extra stability and I needed it not to slip and move. So I went ahead and used Heat and Bond and it did help. But I tend to like the raggedy look for appliques, especially on these types of designs. If you don't want it, use Heat and Bond light. Only the light. Don't do anything thicker than that. Otherwise it just kind of makes everything too thick and too stiff, especially on shirts. It doesn't allow it to have that movement that Heat and Bond light would do. Okay, so this one is now done with the second. So we'll go ahead and start the third one here. Maybe. I don't know why this thing's going so slow. Okay, so now I need to go ahead and rehoop for the third one. Okay, and I apparently need to rethread for the straw, so let me start off with that. Are there any other questions I can answer as far as what you need to do an applique? Really, you only need your stabilizer that you're going to use on that fabric no matter what, your fabric choice, obviously, in your design, and then a pair of scissors for applique. There's two different kinds. There's a duck bill and then there's this double bend. I've only used the double bend, but it's completely personal preference as to which one you like better. I will post the link for this in the link of the video like I did last time as soon as we're done here. Are you guys getting excited to try applique now? Okay, so my little straw is almost done. It's about time to rethread. For those of you that are just joining us, we are using that repositional hoop to do the applique, which is why it's in 3 separate pieces, and using it in one. Good, I'm so glad to hear you guys are excited. I really can't wait to see everything you guys come up with. Okay, I'm using Florani thread. I think I said that right, I probably didn't though. My machine doesn't typically like this thread. It typically likes the really cheap Amazon thread for some reason, but I had a couple colors and it just happened to match this fabric. So it's not that it hates it, it just sometimes doesn't necessarily stitch with the proper tension, but I think it's just because this thread's a little bit silkier than what it's used to or what it really likes, which is nice. I think some of the higher end and the bigger machines really like this expensive thread. Good, I'm so glad to hear that, Michelle. Welcome to the club. It's super addicting, but we're glad that you're here. Okay, so you guys, we did that placement stitch for our third one. I've already got that fabric cut out because we measured it to make sure it fits with the last one. I'm just going to make sure that this is all completely covered, that we don't have any of that underneath stitch showing. My presser foot's down and I'm just going to let it go. So this is the last tack down stitch. We'll go back and we'll trim this and then it will finish up our design. I mess up all the time. That's why I literally test every single new design that I buy on this fabric. Super cheap cotton fabric, Hobby Lobby, buy it by the yard. I typically buy 3 to 4 yards at it and just kind of trim it to be just a little bit bigger than my hoop. That way if I do mess up, it's not a big deal. It's not on anything that matters. It's not on a blank, and I don't really have to mess with tearing out stitches. I can just kind of move to another piece of fabric. So don't be afraid to mess up. It's all trial and error, and you will mess up. But that's the best thing about these groups is it's a safe to fail environment. So if you do and you need to know what went wrong, we're here to help. We love to help. I'm obviously still learning myself. I learn something new every day about this machine and about these machines. So don't be afraid. Okay. So this is our last tack down stitch. So you guys can see this is puffy. It's also not tight. That's another thing that Heat and Bond will do is it'll help stick those two pieces of fabric together, and it will really kind of help ensure that it doesn't move and that you get that nice flat surface. But it's up to you whether or not that bothers you or not. It would bother me if I was purchasing a shirt, but on practice stitches, I don't really like to use my Heat and Bond light because that stuff's kind of expensive. You can get it at craft stores with your coupon, but still, whatever I can do to not spend the money on Heat and Bond. But if there's a fabric that I'm testing that I really don't know how it's gonna stitch, I'll definitely try that out. Okay, it's almost done, and I am absolutely loving this little snowball design. I originally saw it on a very cute little ruffle bib that you can get from ARB Blanks, and knew I had to have it, and I've just been dying to try it out, so I'm glad to see that this turned out pretty cute. The great thing about this, too, is you could make it girl or boy depending on the fabric. I am so glad that you're no longer scared to try it, and no, I'm definitely not perfect, so let me know what you guys want in the next video. I will do one of these once a week. If there's a better day that works for everyone, just let me know, but I kind of decided the middle of the week would be great. That way you can try it, and then hopefully over the weekend we can get some more designs posted. I want to get a little bit more designs posted here in the group as far as what people are trying, what you like, what you don't like, so make sure you guys get involved. Okay, I don't use spray stabilizer. I am one of those people, I'm one of the very few people, but I hate spray stabilizer. If you spray it too much, it will change the color of your fabric. It will change the texture of your fabric. It can gum up your needles. It also makes you replace your needles a whole lot faster. That's my opinion. You have every right to try it. You have every right to do whatever you want. As far as applique goes, if you're wanting it to not fray and you're wanting to get that really thick, smooth stitch, then you should not do spray stabilizer. You should do heat and bond light. And again, too, if you overspray with a spray stabilizer, you can get spots on your fabric. Sometimes they're permanently there. You are technically supposed to spray stabilizer in a box in another room, not even close to your machine, but if it gets close to your machine, it can really mess up your machine. Yes, I am going to save this video in the group, so you will have access to these videos. You can go back and just find them in the videos. We'll make sure and save them all. But yes, you are very welcome. Yeah, don't spray stabilizer, hit or miss. A lot of people float. Floating is where you don't actually hoop whatever fabric you're using. You're going to hoop your stabilizer, you're going to pen or spray stabilize your actual fabric to it. Sometimes people do both. That's great for bigger things that doesn't necessarily fit in the hoop or things that are very hard to hoop, but people typically do that with multi-needle machines or bigger machines. You're going to see a lot of people that say they float with the machines our size, and to me it's just a little unrealistic. I've done it with one or two things like a towel if it's just really, really, really hard to hoop. But again, I choose to pen over spray stabilizer, but that's just my personal preference. Okay, so here is this precious little 3-in-a-row repositional hoop design with applique. I'm going to zoom in that way you guys can see the blanket stitch. You're also going to be able to see where I screwed up and I did not hold the thread to start at all these points. So my backing does this. If you're appliquing or you're embroidering on a onesie or t-shirt for a kid, there's this stuff that's called Wonder Touch, I believe is what it is. I will also post it. There's different brands of it, but it just irons on the back of this and covers up all of the stitches. See-through, so they can still see if you guys do this. So I typically still go back and trim it, but it just makes it to where it's not itchy or scratchy against skin. I haven't really found that any of the stuff is itchy or scratchy, but everyone has different skin types, so that's completely up to you whether or not you want to do that. But once again, here is this precious little applique 3-in-a-row, and I did change this because I did not applique this portion, which I could have done as well and made the entire thing 3D. Are there any more questions before we sign off for the night? Okay, everyone, well, thank you guys for joining me. I know I took about 45 minutes of your time, so I really appreciate you guys joining. Let's see. Okay, so with Heat and Bond, you do have the back, but with Heat and Bond Light, you don't have that back. That's another reason to just use the Heat and Bond Light. It's a lot more movable and a lot, I don't know, pliable, I guess, if I'm looking for the right words. But like I said, I'm here if you guys need anything. You guys can PM me, comment. If you guys try it, please, please, please post your results. We would love to see it. And I will try to do my best to flag you guys. I don't know exactly how to do that yet, but I will figure that out. It's only my second Facebook Live video, so bear with me here. But whatever you guys need, let me know. Also, give me ideas for what you guys need for your next video. I think someone posted that they just want more kind of repositional hoops or multi-hoops, so I'm going to only use a 4x4 next week and show you guys how to line up your different stitches and kind of create that multiple hoop design if you guys don't have a multi-hoop. But if there's anything else you guys want, please let me know. I will save this to the group, that way you guys have it. And like I said, I'll go back and I'll post those links here in just a minute. So I hope you guys have a great rest of your week, and I will see you guys soon.